Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Hope we're all doing well. Before we get to today's content, I want to start by just hopefully giving you a heads up that you're already aware of. Has everybody seen the dates and the new times for the AP exams? Obviously, it doesn't apply to this particular class because you're just submitting your portfolios, but for your other classes, is everybody aware of and cognizant of those changes in dates and in times? If you're not, let me know, and I can try to forward all of that information to you because the content is different. Okay, the format's different. Those of you, for example, that are taking AP US History, you're doing for that class just one 5-document DBQ. So it's a different kind of a format. So if you didn't get any of that information from your other AP teachers, please just let me know, and I can forward that on to you. I would say the biggest change and the most important thing is that you have to make arrangements and have to make plans to be online at the time that that test starts. The entire world is going to be taking that test at the exact same time. So if if your exam is supposed to start at 2 o'clock and you don't log in until 2:05, you've only got 40 minutes to complete that test instead of 45. So you want to make sure that you make arrangements now to be logged in by the time that that test starts. And they'll be sending all kinds of information about that, how to log in, where you go to log in. Supposedly, they're going to be releasing a practice for each class so that you can see like what the interface is going to look like, and what all of the different buttons are going to do. Supposedly that is coming out later this month, by the end of this month. So hopefully you'll be able to kind of practice a little bit with that before you get started. But like I
Mr.
said,
Alex,
yes.
do we have a new student?
Do we have a new student? Who is
Yeah,
that? Who?
Yuri.
Yeah, that's a good question. Who is that? Yuri, who are you? Hey, Milo.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think we're gonna go ahead and remove them. So I don't know who that is.
All right.
There we go. Okay. I was wondering who that was. Okay.
Hello?
Hey, Milo, we can hear you now.
Hey, okay, finally, my
Yeah,
lord.
excellent. All right. So before we move on, then, does anybody have any questions about exams? Like I said, for our class, it's just a portfolio anyway, so we don't have to worry too much about that. So this is just general AP questions that you might have. No? Anybody? Okay, if you think of them later on, you can feel free to message me and I'll try to get any of those answers to you. For our class, like I said, everything needs to be uploaded by May the 26th. Okay, so we do get an extra month. We are working towards trying to have IWAs finished by the end of April. And then we'll be going back during those 3 or so weeks we have in May to go back and revise IRRs. So that's sort of the timeline that we are working on. Okay, IWAs this month and then IRRs next month. And then we're hoping to have everything uploaded again by the end of May. Okay, so that's sort of where we're headed. All right, so any general questions right now about what you're working on before I get started with the lesson for today? Anybody have any IWA questions I can answer at this point in time? Anything at all?
When are you going to open up the IRRs?
The beginning of May. Okay, so our goal will be to finish IWAs this month by the end of April, and then use those 3 weeks or so in May to edit again and to fix IRRs. Okay, so you'll have about 3 weeks in May to do that.
When you release that, can you like explain what's supposed to be in the IRR?
Yeah, we're gonna have time to go back and do that again. Yes, absolutely. I'm not just gonna hand them to you and say fix it without telling you what you should fix. Okay.
Do you think that, like, do you think we're gonna be back in school at all this year?
I have no idea. I hope so. I would like to be. But I honestly, I have no idea. I mean, I feel like it changes every day.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody knows at this point, which is why they're doing in like 2-week increments. So I honestly have no idea. I hope so, but who knows?
All right.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So let me go ahead. What we're going to talk about today, what I want to talk about today is some suggestions on how you might organize your IWAs. Okay, so what the organization of the IWA might look like. Okay, now obviously this is just a suggestion. There's no requirement that you have to break up your paragraphs like this or do this exactly. All of that is up to you. This was just something that I developed for those people who might want a little bit of guidance based on making sure that you hit on all of the points that are on the rubric, okay? And so we'll start with the kind of introductory paragraphs first. This will go pretty quickly because we've already talked about this part, and then we'll spend a little bit more time on the body paragraphs. But generally, you're probably looking at 1 to 2 paragraphs for an introduction. I know a couple people told me that they had one very long introductory paragraph that took up the whole first page. That's okay, but you might want to look at splitting that very long paragraph up into 2 kind of medium-sized paragraphs, okay? Because it just might, flow a little bit better, right? So we know that we're looking for some kind of a hook. We know that we're looking for you to explain the issue. We're looking for both a research question and a thesis. And then those last 2 points are kind of important too, right? We're looking for the background, what the context is, what the lenses are going to be, and then looking to see that you're using multiple sources and at least 1 or 2 of the stimuli, okay? And so if we think about, okay, so how do we introduce the issue? How do I start this off, okay? This potentially could be a paragraph all by itself, or you could also combine it with your contextualization and your historical lenses, okay? That's gonna be completely up to you, okay? So, this is totally up to you how you might want to do this, okay? But basically, at this point, you're starting to explain to me or the readers, what is the issue and why should we care about it, okay? So you're starting with some kind of a hook, okay? It could be a fact, it could be a little anecdote, just whatever it might be. This also might be a good time to even possibly start with something right out of the stimulus, okay? That's certainly a possibility. You also then want to move into explaining the issue. Now, explaining the issue should not go on forever and ever and ever. It should be, again, between 2 to 4 sentences, so part of a paragraph, not an entire paragraph, in which you are providing any of the relevant and the contextual information, okay? So you're explaining to me why this issue is important, okay? This might be a good time for you to start citing from another one of the stimulus materials. You don't have to, okay, but this might be another time for you to do that. Also consider here explaining to the readers why there is a controversy about this, okay? If you're doing something related to, I don't know, happiness or medication treating depression or something, okay? Explain why there's a controversy there. Why are there some people who don't want to medicate to handle depression, okay? Or why is gene therapy controversial? What are the arguments there? So explain to me what the controversy is, why it's controversial. And then obviously you would move into your thesis, okay? Keep in mind that a thesis, okay, comes after the research question. You obviously need to have a question before you can write a thesis statement. This is a little different from some of the essays that you write either in your English class or your history classes where you are given the question. In this particular assignment, you're not given a research question. You are drafting or coming up with your own research question and then writing a thesis based on it. So keep that in mind, okay, that you have to first create the question, and then your obviously would be your answer to that question. Okay, so there we go. Okay, obviously the stimulus material that you choose to use needs to be relevant to your argument. Okay, you can't just plop in a stimulus, so you can't just throw in a quote from something out of the packet and expect that you're going to get the five points there. Make sure that you are able to cogently and relevantly explain what the connection is to your argument. Okay, it has to be relevant. You can't just throw it in there. Okay, and then when we start talking about the background and our context and our historical lens, right, this is where this gets a little bit meatier. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this is where this gets a little bit meatier. Okay, because let me go back a minute. Here we go. This is where I wanted to start. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so you have to make the issue understandable to your reader. You have to kind of elaborate on it, have to explain it to us. That means you have to give us some context. Now, what does context look like? I've gotten that particular question a couple of different times. Okay, that's going to be a couple of different things. Number one, it's going to be you telling me, first of all, how did this issue become a problem? Okay, and then making sure that you're documenting information about this controversy from multiple sources. Okay, now that second part there should be about 2 to 3 sentences. Okay, and making sure that when you introduce a new source, you start by establishing what that source's credibility is. So you might say, in a study conducted by Dr. Stephen Crockett, a professor at Harvard, okay, that right away tells me that there is credibility there. You have established Dr. Crockett as a professor at one of the leading colleges in the entire world. So I know that that person has a solid academic background in what you're going to do, okay? So you do need to make sure that you establish the credibility of the source in some way. Now, try to make sure that you're doing that more professionally and more academically than having a sentence that says something like, this source is credible because Stephen Crockett is a professor at Harvard. Okay, yes, that's true, but that's not really a very academic way of stating it. You want to kind of be a little bit more subtle about how you work in qualifications. Okay, so try to be a little bit more prosaic about it. Okay, also in this part of your essay, this is where you're going to kind of elaborate on what that controversy is that you introduced in your previous paragraph. So what are the different points of views here? This is where you might start to bring in lenses, okay? You know, you might say, for example, okay, so let's say that your essay is about, obviously no one's writing about this, but let's say that you're writing about whether or not when we can end quarantines and end social distancing right now. There's going to be different lenses to that particular controversy. Public health experts might say, no, we have to do this for at least the next 4 to 5 months so that we can get this under control. That's the public health lens. That's the medical lens. Okay, economists might say, well, we can't keep an entire country's economy shut down for 5 months. We're never going to recover. That's the economic lens. Okay, so that would be, in that portion of the essay, that would be where you would talk about what the different and the competing points of view are. Okay, and then the same thing for that question that follows. What are the different perspectives, okay, within that, okay? And then finally, in your final sentence or final two sentences, you would take the reader, okay, or readers to where we are right now. So where is this particular controversy at right now? Okay, where is the issue at this moment? So you've kind of walked us through up to the present, and you finish with telling us where this is at in the present, which then sets up what your contribution to this is going to be, and how you are going to provide additional information and possibly additional research into this to this controversy. Okay. All right. So make sure in this part of the essay, right, that you are including the who, what, the when, where, and the why. Okay, making sure that you're telling us, right, why does your research question matter? Why is it important? What is the importance of you studying this issue at this moment? And then obviously to receive a top score, there must be some kind of alignment between your context and your research question. They have to connect, okay? The contextualization that you give readers has to connect in some way to your research question, okay? So you can't just kind of blindly contextualize this particular issue and then your research question has nothing to do with it. Make sure that the two connect, okay? So at this point, now we're kind of ready to move into your body paragraph. So those are what we just talked about, all these things here. Those are going to be within your first couple of paragraphs. Now we're moving into sort of the body of your essay, okay? And so in the body of your essay, okay, this is where you're going to want to include, obviously, sentences, okay, which is going to be kind of like a subclaim, multiple sources, okay, that are all going to be credible and are going to be relevant. Your original commentary, this is where you elaborate on the issue, making sure that all of your sources are cited, and then some kind of a concluding segment or some kind of a concluding sentence which would segue to your next lens. So maybe, again, if you're talking about a public health lens first, you might end that paragraph by saying, however, there are multiple economists throughout the world who have a very different perspective on this issue, okay? And then that segues us into talking about the next lens, okay? And so your lines of reasoning, okay, is where you start to look through those different lenses, okay? Depending on how many lenses you are going to look through would depend on how many paragraphs you have here. If you're looking at the issue through 3 different lenses, I would recommend 3 paragraphs. If you're only doing 2, then this would probably be 2 paragraphs. I would not, under any circumstances, recommend only a single lens. Okay, if you only use one lens, you are going to get dinged and you're going to lose points for not examining the issue through multiple perspectives. Okay, so my recommendation is 3. You can possibly get away with 2 if you do it really, really well, but I think 3 is a better number. I wouldn't do more than 3. Okay, you know, I think with only 2,000 words, 3 is probably about as much as you're going to be able to do, okay? And so what does it look like to have a clear line of reasoning, okay? Well, you start with your topic sentence, okay? And you're gonna choose one concept, okay, from the last paragraph that you wrote and try to use it again in a different way. So basically you are taking an idea from your previous paragraph and you're rewriting it as a topic sentence to kind of introduce a new idea and to introduce the new lens, okay? Think about, obviously, that your stakeholders and your points of view here should all be from multiple perspectives within the same lens, okay? There are gonna be public health experts who are gonna disagree about what the next steps are going to be in this country, okay? There are gonna be economists who are gonna disagree about what the next steps are going to be. So make sure that even though you're talking about a single lens, you are including multiple perspectives here, okay? You should embed evidence from the text at some point here, okay? You want to do that sparingly. You know, this whole paragraph does not need to and should not be quotes, okay? So don't just dump in a quote. Please try to make sure that it's relevant. Again, making sure that you are describing what the credentials of the source are and that you are using and adding in a citation where it's necessary, okay? So you are including the other people's research and then you go into your commentary here where you are explaining what that research is. Why is it relevant? Okay, the commentary over here, obviously this should all be your own words, okay? So you might include the evidence, possibly a quote, possibly not. Then you explain over here using your own words how it's relevant. So think about this middle part here as being someone else's words. Whoops. The middle part here is being someone else's words, and then this being your own words. Okay, and then finally, this is where you would include a transition, okay, or a sentence that would start to paraphrase or start to include information from a different source. Okay, so now you are segueing into another perspective, segueing into someone else's idea, okay, or another point of view, okay? And then again, you can see how this follows. Once you bring in someone else's point of view, then you would add your own commentary here. Now, at this point, your commentary might look a little bit different, okay? Because you would now have to explain, does this new information agree or disagree with the previous idea that you already laid out, okay? Does it extend the idea? So does it take it a step further? You know, how does this new information relate to the information that you already gave me? It could disagree, that's okay. It could be a disagreement, and that's fine, okay? And then again, thinking about the multiple perspectives idea, okay? And then you see how that then transitions into adding a third piece of evidence, okay? And then again, adding your commentary. And then when you get to the end of all this, okay, you go into your concluding sentence that would again segue us into the next lens. So within this paragraph, and this is going to be a bigger paragraph here, we are addressing a single lens, but we're addressing multiple perspectives within that lens, okay? So this is going to be sort of one of the meatier paragraphs, one of the longer paragraphs of your essay, okay? And then just some things to think about with this, right? Okay, you want to be asking yourself at the end of this, did you evaluate multiple perspectives? Did you confirm someone else's ideas? Did you extend someone else's ideas? Or did you consider what the implications or the limitations of those ideas were? That last part there is probably one where students often lose a lot of points, okay? Because they don't talk about limitations and they don't talk about what the implications of that idea are, okay? And then are you using multiple sources which are kind of conversing with each other, going back and forth? Think about people sitting at a dinner table having a conversation where they're sharing ideas and they're disagreeing or they're agreeing or they're extending ideas. That's kind of what these body paragraphs should look like, okay? And then the whole process simply repeats itself for your next lens, okay? I'm not gonna go through the whole thing again, but the process then goes to just repeat itself, okay, for your next lens. Again, multiple perspectives within the same lens, okay? Then we come to the next part of your essay, which is where you're going to talk about solutions, okay? Don't discount this part of the essay either, because there are points here that you don't want to be throwing away, okay? And so in your solution paragraphs, you want to explain to me what your proposed solution is, what the implications of that solution are, and then what the limitations of that solution might be, okay? And so what might that look like? Obviously, you are going to have a topic sentence, okay, which again might provide, or should provide rather, the academic foundation for your solution, okay? So you want your solution to be based on some kind of research and some kind of, you don't just want it to be something random. It needs to be research-based, okay? You are then, again, going to summarize the reasoning and then justify, based on that reasoning and that evidence, what your solution is. Explain in your own words, okay, how that solution can help solve or can resolve your research question. And then finally, finishing up by explaining why your solution has merit, okay? And so again, you can see that this is, again, setting yourself up to be about an 8 to 10 sentence paragraph here. And that's okay, okay? This is gonna be, again, another one of your longer paragraphs, okay? Now, for your implication of the solution, which I would put into a separate paragraph, okay? There is going to be a topic sentence where you should obviously consider what the unintended consequences of that solution might be, and then elaborate on it, okay? If, you know, what are the other implications of this particular solution? How can I address that, okay? How can I address consequences? And then if you can find one, this would be a good spot to include another expert source, okay, to kind of justify all of these implications. If you can't find one, it's okay, but this would be a good spot for you to do that, okay, to kind of include another expert source, okay? And then we get to your limitations, okay? For your topic sentence, okay, you're absolutely, for this one, going to want to include some kind of an expert source, okay? You don't want to come up with a limitation on your own. You want to find some expert, some academic source somewhere that can tell you what a real world limitation is, okay? And then you want to explain as you move on why your solution might still be viable despite these limitations or this limitation, okay? And that last part obviously is going to be the most important. You've got to recognize that there are limitations, but then you have to explain for the readers, yes, this limitation exists, but this is why my solution is still viable, even with these limitations. Okay, this is why what I'm doing still matters and is still important. Okay, this last part, I will just tell you, this last part's a little tricky. Okay, this is not easy to do, and this is absolutely something that when you do it, you're going to want to get feedback on. Okay, so you're absolutely going to want your peer editors to look at the end of this and make sure that you're doing all of these things, because this is not easy to do. Okay, and so then obviously when you get to your references, couple things to keep in mind about references. Yes, you want sources from all different places. You want news sources. You also want to have academic sources. You should have more academic sources than you do popular sources or news sources. Okay, you need to include both, but make sure that you're leaning more towards the academic versus the general news sources. Making sure that the news sources that you use are going to be relevant and reputable, okay, and that everything's credible. Okay, now what does that mean? What does that look like? Okay, well, obviously, like I said, you need to have more of these academic sources. You're not going to get a high score if you're only using news articles. Okay, you need to find academic sources from journals, from peer-reviewed articles, from universities, scholarly articles. Okay, you need to have more of those. When you do use a news source, make sure that they are reputable. Okay, things like the New York Times are fine. The Economist is fine. Wall Street Journal is fine. You want to avoid sources like the Daily Mail, which is a tabloid. You want to avoid something like the National Enquirer. Okay, you want to avoid something like BuzzFeed, although they are getting more and more credible. I would argue probably that you could possibly use certain things out of BuzzFeed because they are becoming a very credible source now. Okay, but don't use the National Enquirer, don't use the Daily Mail. For the love of all things holy, don't use The Onion, okay, which is completely fake news. It's a parody magazine. And then making sure, going back multiple times, okay, and making sure that every source that you use within your essay appears on that reference page, because they will check for that. And so if you reference a source in the essay, you know, like you say, James 2015, page 22, but then you go to your essay and there is no source listed that was written by a T. James, okay, that's going to be a problem and you are going to lose points for that, okay? And so that's something that you want to make sure multiple times that you have listed every time that you cite something in the essay, that it appears in that reference page. Okay, that is extremely important. Don't leave those points on the table. Okay, don't leave any of these points on the table. Please make sure that your spelling and your grammar is, up to par. This is supposed to be a college paper. Okay, you should not be turning it in with terrible grammar. Okay, spelling errors. It should be free of all spelling errors. It should be, all of your subjects and your verbs should be in agreement with each other. Okay, you shouldn't start a sentence with a preposition. Okay, so all of those, all of those grammatical conventions, please make sure that you're not missing out on them. Okay, because those are points that you don't want to leave. Those are points that you don't want to leave sitting on the table. Okay. All right. So what I want to do right now is I'll go ahead and take any questions about that. I see, I'm just looking in the chat now. Tanis, you're confused?
So when you say like it's a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a solution,
Yeah.
my thing isn't really a problem that has a solution. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Okay, of what you're researching?
How music therapy affects autism.
Okay, so your problem, then I don't want to say autism is a problem because that sounds bad.
Yes, it is.
What? So your problem then that you would have to explain would be something about how autism can affect someone's sensory development, perhaps. That's a problem. Okay, or how autism affects somebody's intellectual growth or their emotional growth. That would be the problem. Autism itself is not the problem, obviously. Okay, so the problem would be how having autism can hurt that person's development in other areas. Okay, and so then your solution then would be, for you, it might be, well, that music therapy can help this person cope with whatever. I don't know what your research says, but that would be what your solution would be, is that the use of music therapy might help that person cope with stressful situations or cope with loud noises or whatever it happens to be. Okay?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Other questions that people have?
Hello?
No?
Okay, so for the references, dang,
Yes?
hold on, I forgot. Okay, can you help me like find a way to get this whole bag of jelly beans out my ass?
Okay.
I have a question, Mr. Ehlers.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I just took that person out.
Yeah. So you're mentioning before about the lenses.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's wise to do several lenses in one paragraph? Do you think it's best that we do focus on one lens each paragraph?
I mean, again, this is totally up to you, but I would do each lens in a separate paragraph, okay? Now, within that lens, you're going to have multiple perspectives, but I would do each lens within a separate paragraph, okay?
Okay.
You might have 3 big body paragraphs within the middle of your essay, and then within each lens, you're including multiple perspectives, okay?
And then in the summary part, when we're mentioning our solution, do you think we should do like a combination of all of them together? Just kind of summarizing those lenses up?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think that probably makes the most sense. But again, that's entirely up to you how you want to do it. But I think personally, that's probably how I would do it. Okay.
Thank
you. Other questions? Okay. All right. So then we'll wrap this up. I'll have office hours starting at 1 o'clock. So you can ask me questions then. I'll be online. I'll be able to help you. I will upload the recording of this session. I will also upload the PowerPoint separately. That way, if there is a specific slide that you want to reference, that you want to look at, you can just go to that slide without having to watch this entire presentation. So I will upload that whole PowerPoint separately. Keep in mind that your work for this week is to continue editing 2 other people's papers throughout the course of this week. Okay? All right, so have a great day, everybody. I will talk with you soon. I hope you're all doing well. I miss you. And like I said, office hours start at 1 o'clock. All right, see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.
See you later.